New Year's Eve, the one night of the year when the entire world celebrates together, when strangers become friends, when we count down to new beginnings. It's supposed to be magical, a moment of hope, a fresh start. But for some people, the countdown to midnight was a countdown to something else entirely. Tonight, I'm sharing 4 true stories from people whose New Year's Eve ended in terror. People who were celebrating one moment and fighting for their lives the next. People who will never celebrate New Year's Eve the same way again. These aren't urban legends. These are documented incidents. Before we count down to these stories, I need you to kindly subscribe to this channel right now, because the stories you're about to hear contain real lessons about party safety, crowd awareness, and trusting your instincts, even during celebration. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on all notifications. These aren't just horror stories. They're survival stories that could help you recognize danger before midnight strikes. So kindly subscribe, hit that bell, and let's count down to the worst New Year's Eves these 4 people ever experienced. Our first story comes from Madison, a 24-year-old living in Texas. On New Year's Eve 2019, Madison attended what seemed like a typical house party. Her friend Emma was hosting at her rental house. About 40 people were invited: friends, co-workers, Emma's boyfriend's fraternity brothers. The usual New Year's party crowd. Madison arrived at 9 p.m. The party was already in full swing. Everything seemed normal for the first 2 hours. Madison knew about half the people there. She stayed with her friend group, drank responsibly, planned to Uber home after midnight. But around 11 p.m., she noticed something odd. A man she didn't recognize was watching her. Not occasional glances, constant staring. He wasn't talking to anyone, just standing in the corner of the living room, holding a beer, watching Madison and her friends. She asked Emma about him. Emma didn't know who he was. She assumed he came with one of her boyfriend's friends. House parties on New Year's Eve. People bring people who bring people. It's hard to track everyone. She tried to ignore it. Maybe the guy was just socially awkward. Maybe he was drunk and zoning out. But her instincts told her something was wrong. At 11:30 p.m., Madison went to the kitchen to get water. The man followed her. He didn't say anything at first, just stood in the doorway, watching her. She turned around, saw him, felt her stomach drop. "Hey," she said, trying to sound casual. "Do I know you?" The man smiled. "Not yet, but you will. After midnight." Madison pushed past him, went back to her friends. She told them what happened. They decided to leave. The vibe was off. The guy was creepy, and there were plenty of other parties. But as they moved toward the exit, Madison noticed something that made her blood run cold. There were now at least 6 men she didn't recognize, all positioned at strategic points throughout the house, near exits, near the stairs, in the hallway, not mingling, not celebrating, just watching. Madison grabbed Emma and pulled her aside. "Who are these people? None of my friends know them." "Do you?" Emma started asking around. Her boyfriend didn't know them. None of his fraternity brothers invited them. Nobody knew who they were or how they got in. And it was now 11:45 p.m., 15 minutes until midnight. Emma's boyfriend tried to approach one of the men, asked who he was, who he came with. The man smiled, that same wrong smile, and said, "We're here for the countdown." Madison made a decision. She gathered her close friends, 5 people total, and they quietly moved toward the back door. Not the front entrance where 2 of the strange men were positioned, the back door in the kitchen. They stepped outside into the backyard, cold December air, music muffled through walls. They could still hear the party continuing inside. Madison pulled out her phone, called 911. She explained the situation. Strange men at the party, positioned at exits, refusing to identify themselves, making threatening statements. The dispatcher said officers were on their way. Estimated arrival, 12:15 a.m. Too long. Madison's group stayed in the backyard, hidden behind a fence, watching the house, watching other partygoers inside, oblivious, dancing, getting ready for the countdown. At 11:57 p.m., more men arrived. They walked straight through the front door as if they'd been expected. Madison and her friends watched in horror as the strange men began moving through the party, hurting people. Not violently yet, but deliberately, moving everyone toward the center of the living room. Some partygoers thought it was part of the celebration. Others started to realize something was wrong. At 11:59 p.m., Madison heard someone inside shout, "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" Then screaming. Madison's group ran to the neighbor's house, pounded on the door. The neighbor called 911 again, reporting a home invasion in progress. Police arrived at 12:04 a.m., 4 minutes into the new year. What they found inside was a robbery in progress. The strange men had used the New Year's party as cover for a targeted home invasion. They'd come armed, waited until just before midnight when everyone was distracted and intoxicated, then took control of the house. The investigation revealed this was a planned operation. The men had been casing houses in the neighborhood for weeks, looking for New Year's Eve parties. They'd found Emma's party through social media. She'd posted about it publicly with her address visible in photos. They'd shown up early, blended in during the chaos of a crowded party, positioned themselves strategically, and waited for midnight when they knew everyone would be distracted by the countdown. Their plan was to rob everyone at the party simultaneously: phones, wallets, jewelry, car keys. They'd done this before at 3 other New Year's parties in different cities. But Madison's 911 call disrupted the timeline. Police arrived before the robbery was complete. 11 men were arrested. 4 escaped but were apprehended days later. 8 people were injured during the chaos, mostly in the panic when people tried to escape. Emma's house was destroyed, and nobody at that party celebrated New Year's. Madison and her friends who left when they did were credited with potentially saving lives by calling police before the situation fully escalated. When I spoke with Madison, she had this warning. New Year's parties are easy targets: big crowds, alcohol, distraction, social media advertising. We posted everything online: our address, how many people would be there, that everyone would be drinking. We gave criminals a blueprint. Now I don't post about parties until after they're over. I vet every guest. I trust my instincts, and I never, ever ignore that feeling when someone is watching you wrongly. Every year, approximately 1 million people gather in Times Square to watch the ball drop. It's one of the world's largest New Year's celebrations. Security is tight. Police presence is massive. It's considered safe. But in a crowd of 1 million people, danger can hide in plain sight. This story comes from Tyler and his girlfriend Rachel. They were both 27 years old on New Year's Eve 2021. They'd traveled from Boston to New York specifically to experience the Times Square countdown in person. They arrived at 6 p.m., went through security screening, and found a spot in the crowd near. Good view of the ball, surrounded by festive energy. This was bucket list material. What they didn't understand about the Times Square celebration is that once you're in position, you're trapped. The crowd is so dense, movement is nearly impossible. Police barriers prevent exit. You can't leave for bathroom breaks. You can't leave if you feel sick. You can't leave at all. You stand in place for hours, waiting for midnight. At around 9 p.m., Tyler noticed a man standing directly behind Rachel. Very close. Inappropriately close given the space available around them. Tyler tapped Rachel, pointed out the man. She subtly tried to move forward, create distance. But the crowd was dense. There was nowhere to go. The man moved with her, maintained contact. Tyler turned around, positioned himself between Rachel and the man. Made eye contact, clear message, back off. The man smiled and stayed exactly where he was. Problem? The man asked. Yeah, Tyler said. You need to give us some space. Crowded night, the man replied. Nowhere to go. Tyler looked around for police. The nearest officer was 50 feet away, blocked by hundreds of people. Impossible to reach. And if Tyler left Rachel to get help, he'd never get back through the crowd. They were stuck. At 10 p.m., Tyler felt someone's hand in his jacket pocket. He grabbed the wrist, pulled out a hand holding his phone. A different man, not the one behind Rachel, had been pickpocketing him. The pickpocket yanked his hand free and disappeared into the crowd. Just melted into the mass of people. Gone in seconds. Tyler checked his pockets. Wallet still there. But his phone was gone. Visual. Tyler patting pockets. Panic. Looking around, pickpocket invisible in crowd. Then he realized Rachel's purse was open. Someone had unzipped it while they were distracted with the first man. Her phone was gone. Her wallet was gone. They'd been targeted by a coordinated pickpocketing team, one man as distraction, one as lookout, one to execute. Professional, practiced. They'd probably done this to dozens of people that night. Tyler tried to push through the crowd toward police. Impossible. Too packed. People got angry when he tried to force through. He couldn't explain fast enough. Rachel started crying. Not just about losing her phone and wallet, but because they were stuck in Times Square for 2 more hours with no phone, no ID, no credit cards, no way to call for help, and surrounded by criminals who knew they were vulnerable. At 11 p.m., Tyler felt someone push against Rachel from behind again. The same man from earlier, but this time his hands were moving, touching her inappropriately through the crowd. Tyler shoved the man, hard. The man shoved back. Other people in the crowd started yelling. They couldn't see what was happening, just that a fight was starting. Security finally noticed the disturbance. 3 officers pushed through the crowd, but by the time they arrived, the man who'd been assaulting Rachel had disappeared into the crowd. Tyler tried to explain, tried to report everything. But the officer's priority was preventing a crowd crush. Fights in dense crowds can trigger stampedes. They separated Tyler and Rachel, moved them to different sections for safety. Tyler ended up 2 blocks away. Rachel ended up 3 blocks in the opposite direction. Neither could reach the other through the crowd. Neither had a phone. They were separated in a crowd of 1 million people with no way to communicate, 15 minutes before midnight. Both rattled and scared, victims of robbery and assault with no way to get help. Tyler spent the countdown pushing through the crowd, desperately looking for Rachel, screaming her name over celebration noise, nobody paying attention, everyone focused on the ball. Rachel spent the countdown doing the same, crying, panicking, surrounded by celebration while experiencing the worst night of her life. They finally found each other at 12:47 a.m. after the crowd had started to disperse enough to move. Rachel had been asking strangers to borrow phones to try to reach Tyler, but nobody would help. They filed a police report, joined dozens of others reporting pickpocketing, assault, and other crimes from that night. Times Square on New Year's Eve is a massive security operation, but it's also a hunting ground for criminals who know exactly how to exploit dense crowds. Tyler and Rachel spent January 1st canceling credit cards, filing insurance claims, getting new IDs. Their dream New Year's experience cost them over $2,000 in stolen items and replacement expenses, plus the trauma of assault and separation in a dangerous crowd. When I spoke with them, they had these warnings about large crowd celebrations. Tyler: dense crowds are dangerous, period. You can't move, You can't escape. You can't get help. You're a sitting target for anyone who wants to rob you, hurt you, or worse. Rachel, and nobody cares. Everyone's there to party. They're not looking out for you. Even when we were clearly in distress, people just wanted us out of their view of the ball. Tyler, if you're going to large celebrations, understand you're giving up control. You can't leave when you want. You can't protect yourself easily, and criminals know this. They target these events specifically. Rachel, we'll never do Times Square again. We celebrate at home now, with people we trust, in spaces where we can leave if something feels wrong. A New Year's Eve cruise. For many people, it sounds perfect. Luxury accommodations, multiple parties, guaranteed celebration, and you're literally surrounded by water. No way for trouble to find you. Or so you'd think. This story comes from the investigation files of an incident that occurred on New Year's Eve 2020 aboard the Mediterranean Spirit, a cruise ship with approximately 3,000 passengers. The ship had departed from Barcelona on December 28th for a special New Year's celebration cruise, 4 days at sea, culminating in a massive midnight party on the upper deck as the ship sailed into 2021. Among the passengers were the Morrison family, David and Claire Morrison, both 41, and their teenage daughter, Sophie, 16. The Morrisons had been looking forward to this trip for months, a chance to escape the pandemic stress, celebrate as a family, and experience something special. The first 3 days were perfect. Beautiful weather, excellent food, entertainment, and on New Year's Eve, the excitement was building toward the midnight celebration. At 9:30 p.m., the Morrison family got dressed for the gala. Sophie wanted to meet up with some friends she'd made on the cruise, other teenagers who'd been hanging out by the pool during the day. Claire told her to be back by 11:45 p.m. so they could watch the countdown together as a family. Sophie never made it back. At 11:50 p.m., 10 minutes before midnight, David and Claire went looking for their daughter. They checked the Starlight deck where the main party was happening. Hundreds of people, but no Sophie. They checked the teen club, empty. They checked the pool deck, nearly empty. They checked the restaurants, the casino, the theater. At 11:58 p.m., David called ship security. Midnight struck. Fireworks exploded over the ocean. 3,000 people celebrated the new year. The Morrisons were not celebrating. They were searching a ship the size of a small city for their missing daughter. At 12:15 a.m., ship security began a formal search. Protocol for missing passengers is clear. Check all public areas first, then begin systematic cabin checks if necessary. At 12:47 a.m., a passenger reported hearing screaming from one of the restricted crew areas near the engine deck. Security rushed to the location. What they found made them immediately call for the ship's medical team and lock down all exits. Sophie Morrison was found unconscious in a crew storage room. She'd been drugged, assaulted, and left in a restricted area where passengers weren't supposed to have access. The ship's medical team stabilized Sophie. She regained consciousness at 2:15 a.m. Her account of what happened changed everything from a party cruise to a crime scene investigation. According to Sophie's testimony, she'd gone to meet her friends at 9:45 p.m. On her way to the teen club, she ran into a crew member who offered to show her a better party where the cool people were hanging out. Sophie, wanting to seem mature, followed him. He led her through crew-only corridors. She thought it was exciting, like a VIP experience. He brought her to what he claimed was a crew party in a storage room. There were 2 other crew members there. They offered her a drink. That's the last thing Sophie remembered before waking up in the medical bay hours later. Ship security immediately detained the 3 crew members Sophie identified. A search of the storage room found evidence of previous assaults, disturbing items, photographs, records, suggesting this wasn't the first time. The cruise ship was diverted to the nearest port. Authorities boarded at 8 a.m. on January 1st. The 3 crew members were arrested. The ship was held in port for 36 hours while investigators processed the crime scene. 3,000 people's New Year's cruise ended in police investigations, interrogations, and the horror of knowing predators had been working on the ship they'd trusted with their safety. The investigation revealed that the 3 crew members had been working on various cruise ships for years. They'd been transferring between ships, targeting young female passengers, exploiting their access to restricted areas. They'd assault passengers, then the victims would disembark at the next port, and the crew members would remain on the ship with new passengers who had no idea what had happened days before. Sophie was at least the 7th known victim, possibly more who never reported. The 3 men were convicted in court and sentenced to lengthy prison terms. The cruise line faced multiple lawsuits and was forced to completely overhaul their crew vetting procedures and passenger safety protocols. Sophie Morrison spent months in therapy. The family never took another cruise. And they've become advocates for better safety measures on cruise ships, particularly for young passengers. When I spoke with Claire Morrison, she wanted parents to know cruise ships market themselves as safe, controlled environments, but they're floating cities with thousands of strangers from dozens of countries, including crew members you know nothing about. We assumed Sophie was safe because we were on a ship, but she was more isolated and vulnerable than she would have been in most hotels on land. Trust is not enough. Verify everything. Know where your children are. Don't assume that uniforms mean safety. And understand that if something goes wrong in international waters, getting justice is incredibly complicated. Our final story is about the most predictable danger on New Year's Eve, the one everyone knows about but somehow still happens every single year. Drunk drivers. This account comes from first responders who worked New Year's Eve 2022 in Oregon. What they encountered on January 1st was the worst traffic accident many of them had ever seen. At approximately 12 minutes after midnight, a 34-year-old man named Derek Walsh left a New Year's Eve party in Portland. He was extremely intoxicated. His blood alcohol level would later be measured at 24, 3 times the legal limit. Multiple people at the party tried to stop him, offered to call an Uber, offered to let him sleep on the couch. He refused all help and got behind the wheel. Derek Walsh made it approximately 4 miles before he crossed the center line on Powell Boulevard, going 70 mph in a 35 mph zone. He hit an oncoming vehicle head-on. The vehicle he hit was driven by 29-year-old Vanessa. Vanessa was a nurse driving home from her hospital shift. She'd worked New Year's Eve so her colleagues with families could have the night off. She'd helped deliver a baby at 11:47 p.m., a New Year's baby born 13 minutes before midnight. She was going to go home, have a glass of wine, video call her family in California, and go to sleep. She never made it home. The impact killed Vanessa instantly. She was pronounced dead at the scene at 12:31 a.m., first hour of the new year. Derek Walsh survived. Minor injuries, seatbelt and airbag saved his life, but Walsh's car didn't stop after hitting Vanessa. The impact sent both vehicles spinning. Walsh's car continued across the intersection and hit 2 more vehicles that were stopped at a red light. One of those vehicles contained a family of 4, Marcus and Jennifer Lee, and their 2 children, ages 7 and 4. Returning from a friend's New Year's party. The impact crushed the rear of their SUV. Both children, sitting in the back seat, were critically injured. Marcus Lee, the father, had minor injuries. Jennifer Lee suffered a broken collarbone and ribs. But their children, Emma, age 7, and Noah, age 4, both required emergency airlift to OHSU Hospital for traumatic injuries. The third vehicle hit was driven by 22-year-old college student Amy Park, who was designated driver for her friends. She'd spent the evening completely sober. making sure her friends got home safely. The collision gave Amy a severe concussion and whiplash. Her 3 passengers had various injuries, broken bones, lacerations, trauma, all because one person decided to drive drunk at 12:12 a.m. on New Year's Day. Emma Lee, age 7, spent 6 weeks in intensive care. She survived but lost her spleen and suffered permanent injury to her left leg. She still walks with a limp. Noah Lee, age 4, spent 3 weeks in ICU, multiple surgeries. He survived but has ongoing medical issues and trauma. Marcus and Jennifer Lee spent January 1st not celebrating a new year, but wondering if their children would survive it. We did everything right. We were sober. We were following traffic laws. We were stopped at a red light. And our children almost died because someone else made a selfish choice. Vanessa Torres's family spent January 1st planning her funeral instead of video calling her to say Happy New Year. Her co-workers at the hospital were devastated. She'd stayed late so they could celebrate with their families. She'd helped bring life into the world at 11:47 p.m. By 12:31 a.m., she was gone. Amy Park recovered physically after months, but she still has anxiety about driving and doesn't go out on New Year's Eve anymore. Derek Walsh was charged with vehicular manslaughter, multiple counts of assault, DUI, and reckless endangerment. He pled guilty and was sentenced to 22 years in prison. At his sentencing, he apologized to the victims, said he'd made a terrible mistake, said he never meant for anyone to get hurt. Jennifer Lee was in the courtroom. She gave a victim impact statement that made the judge cry. Jennifer's statement: "You didn't make a mistake. You made a choice. You chose to drink. You chose to keep drinking. You chose to refuse help. You chose to get in that car. You chose to drive. Every single action was a choice. And my children will live with your choices for the rest of their lives. Vanessa Torres will never get to make choices again. Her life ended because of your choices." The accident was one of 47 drunk driving incidents in Portland alone on New Year's Eve 2022. Nationally, an estimated 300 people died in drunk driving accidents over the New Year's holiday period that year. Every single one was preventable. When I spoke with Marcus Lee for this video, he had this message: "If you're watching this and you drink, please, I'm begging you, plan your ride before you start drinking. Not after. Before. Download Uber. Download Lyft. Have a designated driver. Stay where you are. Sleep on the couch. Call a taxi. Walk. Do anything except get behind the wheel. Because the 12 minutes Derek Walsh spent driving drunk cost my family years of hospital visits, surgeries, trauma therapy, and permanent injury. It cost Vanessa Torres her entire life, and it cost Derek Walsh his freedom. Nobody won. Everybody lost. And it was completely, entirely, absolutely preventable. Don't let your midnight countdown become someone's last countdown. Don't let your celebration become someone's tragedy. 4 New Year's Eves, 4 countdowns to midnight, 4 situations that turned celebrations into nightmares. Madison and her friends who recognized danger at a party and trusted their instincts. Tyler and Rachel, who learned that large crowds can trap you with criminals. Sophie Morrison, who discovered that predators can hide in plain sight with uniforms and authority. And the Lee family, whose lives were shattered by someone else's decision to drive drunk. New Year's Eve is supposed to be about hope, new beginnings, fresh starts. And for most people, it is. Millions of people celebrate safely every year. They plan ahead, they watch out for each other, they make smart choices. But awareness is your best defense against becoming a statistic. Vet all guests or keep parties small with known people. Don't post party details publicly on social media until after. Have a trusted friend check in with you at set times. Know all exits and have an escape plan. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, leave immediately. Valuables secure and minimal. Stay with your group. Don't get separated. Have a meeting point if you do get separated. Keep phone charged and in secure pocket. Know where security police are located. Understand you may not be able to leave easily. For cruise ships, travel. Keep children supervised at all times. Know crew member names and report suspicious behavior. Understand jurisdictional complications if something goes wrong. Don't go to restricted areas with anyone. Tell someone your plans and check in regularly for drinking driving. Arrange transportation before you start drinking. Use rideshare apps, taxis, designated drivers. Stay where you are if you can't get safe transport. Never let drunk friends drive. Take their keys. Call police if you see dangerous driving. If you're celebrating New Year's Eve this year or any year, share these stories with your friends. Share these safety tips. Have conversations about what to do if something feels wrong, because the people in these stories didn't think it would happen to them either. They were just celebrating, just having fun, just trying to welcome a new year, and their lives changed forever when midnight struck. Thank you for watching. If you have your own New Year's Eve experience, something that taught you to be more careful, more aware, more prepared, you can share it in the comments or submit anonymously through the email in the description. And please, if you found this video helpful, share it with anyone who will be celebrating New Year's Eve. This information could prevent them from becoming the next story I have to tell. Stay safe out there. Celebrate responsibly. Watch out for each other. And remember, the best way to start a new year is to survive to see it. Make smart choices. Trust your instincts. And get home safely.